This is A Deeper Listen, the show we talk with musicians about the thoughts and experiences that shape their music. I'm Emily Fox. And today, I'm introducing you to
Lawrence Rothman, a singer, songwriter, producer, originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I live between Los Angeles and Nashville now, but I still get back to Missouri whenever I can.
Lawrence Rothman's career started out in a rock band with their brothers called Living Things.
We went all over the world and back like 1,000 times. We toured a lot and we made a lot of records.
After about a decade with Living Things, Rothman started releasing music as a solo artist. They've explored so many genres since, from more industrial sounds to dance, to ballads featuring Sonic Youth's Kim Gordon, and another with Lucinda Williams. Dream a little dream inside a dream. Pop. To synthy instrumentals. Their previous album was mostly spoken poetry.
We, universe inside of universe inside of we, wandering amongst godless heavens and burned out stars.
But Rothman's latest album is in the Americana and country realm, and the album dives into some pretty personal topics. One that is featured the most on the record is Rothman's decade-long struggle with body dysmorphia and battle with anorexia that lasted a few years. You hear it in the songs LAX,
The doctor says soon out the skin and bones.
Kerosene,
Abusing my body, born on starvation.
and Drugstore Bummin'.
I can see every bone in a ribcage.
How would you describe how body dysmorphia and anorexia entered your life and what that felt like when you were in it?
You know, I think it's something that I wasn't able, or no, I don't think. It was definitely something I wasn't able to identify for many years. You know, you see yourself a certain way in the mirror that can affect your head and your heart and your soul, and in a way that's negative, in a way that other people don't see you. You know, sometimes you're imagining an ugliness that doesn't maybe necessarily exist, or even if it does, it's not going to hinder your life. And you know, and with social media, there's a lot of photos that get circulated of oneself. You know, and when I'm talking about me in particular, it's like, you know, I'll play a show and somebody will take a photograph and upload it, and they're just being pleasant and celebrating the fact that, you know, they got to come see me perform and things like that. And I've looked at some of these photos sometimes and they've affected me in a negative way. And I mean, it's an embarrassing thing to talk about because it almost feels, in some ways, it feels like a weird, shallow way to look at life. Like, oh, I don't look nice, or, you know, you don't like the way you look. Feels a bit shallow. But the reality is, no matter how thick or strong one's skin is, everybody has a certain sort of ideal of what they look like, you know? And I feel like through the years, it affected me in a way that was beyond just the normal, like, oh, that's a bad photo. It affected me in a way that would put me in severe slumps and stupors. And I would imagine myself to be heavier than I really am. I mean, I'm naturally a very kind of skinny person, and I would see myself visually looking like I'm not. And then it led me to a lot of, sort of extreme dieting and extreme dieting teas and laxatives and all this sort of, you know, realm of trying to stay some sort of ideal weight. And that isn't healthy. It's hard for me to talk about. I'm sort of stumbling here because it's just like one of those things that's just so close to me in a way that is feels embarrassing, but I feel like it's important to talk about because as I talk about it, I feel like a lot of other people identify with it in a way that they see themselves maybe going through a rough patch, that at least I can give you a warning, because I ended up in the hospital and you don't want to end up in the hospital with a bleeding stomach.
That's what ended up happening? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that happens for everybody, but that's what happened to me. And that, I would say, I mean, I've been struggling with this for on and off for like 5 years. And that moment, I don't know, I have a fear of just seeing blood and things like that. And something about that really triggered me in a way that I was able to just stop cold turkey, abusing laxatives and dieting pills and things like that.
Saw my face in that airport bathroom mirror, and I didn't recognize myself or what I had become. Skeletal remains of who I used to be that scared me straight out of this hell that I've been running from.
Well, yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing. I mean, I know that I personally struggled with anorexia I was really young. It was the summer between 5th and 6th grade, which is really sad to think about, that I was like 12,
Wow.
And I remember when I was in it, it was like, I was a bigger kid. I got bullied a ton in 5th grade on my 45-minute bus ride home. Everyone would be talking about my weight and everything. And then I dropped 20 pounds in a summer, which for a 12-year-old is kind of a lot of weight, and
Yeah.
And I remember being in it, and you kind of know that you're in it, but you don't ever admit that you're in it, right? And I think trying to stop the cycle, like I remember it got to a point where my mom was really worried, and her like making sure that I ate, and me being so scared about what was going in my body. And, she recognized something was wrong, and me denying that something was wrong. And so, getting to the point where you break that cycle is hard. And so, like, for you, it sounds like, you ended up in the hospital, and that was kind of a call for you. But like, is it something that you feel like you have completely broken, or are there things that you need to keep in mind to, make sure you don't go back to that point again?
Yeah, it's, I don't think cold turkey works for everybody.
Yeah.
And for me in the past, it's never worked. But for this scenario, I think I was so scared, right? I mean, the hospital and the doctors said that like I was moments away from something that would have been sort of the end of me. And I love life, so it really disturbed me in a way that every time I kind of look at any of those things that I was taking, the pills, the teas, all the different things I was doing, I was just eating red cabbage for like 3 weeks. They all kind of make me nauseous now.
Yeah.
Though to relapse into that, yeah, I mean, it's only been a year and 5 months now. And there's been moments of going, wanting to dive back into that. And there's been things that I see of myself as recent as yesterday that I'm like, and it definitely brings my brain and my, it brings me back to that place again of wanting to like change the way I look and things like that.
I skim every ounce, I starve out every pound. The doctor says soon I'll be skin and bones. But from the here and now, I see it all so clear, that the plow that broke the plains was not alone. My fam, your eyes have always seen through me, so I'll bury these here pills in the dirt. I don't wanna be your
And these stories that you're telling in this record are again, like so deeply personal, but, why was it important for you to write about it, in a way that, people are going to hear some of these lyrics and be like, know exactly what you're talking about. So why was it important for you to, put it in music and also be at the point where you're comfortable, like, sharing it publicly?
I don't think I'll ever be comfortable sharing it publicly, though I am sharing it publicly. It's not a comfortable thing to share, but for me, I feel like it's a necessity because I kind of can't make music if it's just for my own self. I don't really step up to the mic and write a song or make a record for myself unless there's something about it that can, help someone else. If there's a story that I can tell that actually is something that, is more universal than just to me. Because the stories that just happen to me that are just very personal to me that I don't feel like anybody can relate to, I don't feel like are worth telling. And for some artists that works, and I applaud that. But for me, it doesn't. So, every record, I've only put out 3 solo albums, but each one has been a personal thing about my life, but that I feel is are stories that other people are going through. And those are the ones that I choose to be the songs that I record and put out into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to also talk about your song Poster Child. I understand that part of that song was written in reflection to some violence you experienced after a show.
I got shot outside the 3 clubs. The bullets blew my eardrum. Can we use that?
Can you talk about that incident that inspired part of the song Poster Child?
Yeah. So I avoided that subject of writing about that incident my whole career. So that happened to me in 2003, so 2003. So interesting when you're like gotten to 2023.
I know, yeah.
How you say 2003.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. But I was with my band Living Things. We were playing in Dallas, and I was on stage and I guess dressed in a way that some audience members thought was offensive for some reason, and I had makeup on and things like that. And it was a great show until afterwards, and I was out back of the club, and 3 men jumped me and fired bullets at me on the ground. Luckily, none of them hit me, but I had broken ribs and I had shattered my eardrum, and it was a very traumatic experience for me. And this is pre-Battle Clan, I believe is how you say it, the gig in France where people shot at the club. It was sort of very, you didn't really hear about people attacking people at concerts back in 2003. So it wasn't something that like myself or like our tour manager or anybody ever thought about. And then after that, it was many, many, many years of being on edge about like, oh, I don't want to be alone outside of a club. I don't want to, after a show, I want to go right into the van and go to the hotel or to the bus. And it really affected me. And I was like, I'm never writing about it. And then fast forward 2022, in December of 2022, I was with Jason Isabel and we decided to do a writing session. And Jason was like, what should we write about? And I'm like, I don't know. A lot of the stories on this record are personal, but I want them to be relatable to experiences that everybody goes through, or relatable experiences that, most people go through. And so I started telling him this story, and he was like, well, we should write about that. And so we wrote that song about an hour and a half, and it felt really nice to get it out because it's been something I've talked about before, but I've never really sort of purged from myself. And so I look at songwriting sometimes as like a purging as well. Once you sort of get it out of your system and you sing it aloud, and you're basically like singing these words, and you're chanting them loudly. They sort of purge yourself of the energy of it. And so it felt very nice to do that, and to now sing it every night and just sort of feel it like just exiting my body, and not being this sort of dark cloud that's always in the back of my head. Because I swear every time I walk into a club, it's like it enters my head.
I got shot outside the 3 clubs. The bullets blew my eardrum. Can we use that? Stole the sets in from my brother, but the bracelet bracelet was my sister's. Can we use that? I've had half a dozen beatings and 1,000 AA meetings. Can we use that? We can use that. We can make you the rage. We can do that.
I think I also read, like, wasn't there like some element of political division too? Like maybe there was like a comment or some visual that happened on stage regarding like, you know, kind of anti-George Bush or something that the group that was violent towards you was like mad about. Does that also a factor as well in that incident?
Yeah, I mean, I was young at the time. I was around 21 or something, and I was doing this. It was, it's like that was very fresh off of 9/11 and all that, and I was burning pictures of George Bush on stage. Back then, you could do fire in clubs, or in most clubs, they didn't really care. I mean, there was smoking in clubs and things like that. And I burnt a picture of him on stage, and yeah, that was obviously part of what I'm sure triggered these gentlemen as well. But it was me just ranting about the things I didn't agree with about Mr. Bush, and should I have burnt a picture? Maybe that was going too far. I have no idea, but I was just voicing my opinion. And back in those days, I used to like pass the microphone around to the crowd and let them talk freely about the state of America and things like that. And even if it was things I didn't agree with, it was a conversation that I would love having at shows. And I did pass the mic around that night. They didn't say anything, but the appropriate thing would have been to have had a debate with me about it, not try to kill me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine. I'm so sorry you went through that. Also in this song, Poster Child, there's a line there about homelessness.
I was fighting my confusion. I was homeless. I was using when she found me. Poster child.
Was that something that you also personally experienced?
Yeah, we were in that song. We were writing about the experience of the few years that led up to the Dallas incident, and what brought me to that stage. We were kind of going through like a memory lane type of thing, because during those 2 years, I was very much discovering myself, discovering that I was gender fluid, discovering that there's a place for me to be myself amongst the world, because, when you're 18, 19, especially back in the early 2000s, like, wasn't a very welcoming place for people that weren't just of what society called normal at the time, but I found a group of individuals in Chicago and things like that were really accepting. But, I had some hard times getting to that place. And so at one point, I was homeless, and I was staying in this place in Chicago. There was a shelter, and then I ended up in a very sort of dodgy hotel called the Tokyo Hotel that was like kind of like almost like a youth hostel type of thing. And it was a rough period, but it led me to writing the music that got me my first record deal. And inside of that song, we were talking about how, because at the time when that incident happened to me, the record company was trying to sort of get me to talk about it a lot and almost exploit the incident. And that's where the name Poster Child in that song came from. And I wasn't comfortable talking about it. And they were putting me in positions, setting me up in positions with journalists to talk about it. And I didn't want to talk about it. And so that's why we wrote the line Poster Child inside of that song.
We can cash in your ghost, we can do that. Call the Washington Post, you can move that. Sell them a share of your heart. You're the face of the state of the art, and we can use that.
I'm also curious to learn more about the song Our Blood and what inspired that track.
So take this Bible belt with you. You can't hide behind a religion that
protest style songs haven't been really coming naturally to me. I could write an essay about all the injustice of the world, but songwriting wise, it hasn't been something that has been coming natural to me over the last 10 years. And but I got home from being in the hospital in Nashville, and I got back to LA, and I'd had a 2-week period of just going to counseling and trying to relax my emotions and my brain and my body. And after about 2.5 weeks, I was in a place where I wanted to kind of write a little bit. And then as I was healing from my hospital stay in Nashville, I was sitting down at my guitar, and Our Blood kind of came out of me like in a couple of minutes, really, like no joke. And there was a lot of traumatic things going down in Nashville at the time with school shootings and things like that. And something came into my brain, and I just sort of spewed out that song.
7 angels with 7 plagues, Civil War II right here, center stage, American dream, turn American whore. Well, how do you sleep when there's families you've torn, living in some fairy tale world you think you can sing, then get reborn?
When I was done, I looked at the lyrics, and it really meant something to me in a different way than just observing what's going on in the country. It felt very much like it was also sort of a snapshot of my own upbringing in childhood, and the things that I went through as a kid in Missouri, and a lot of the backward values that were going on in St. Louis at the time, and how those things, as I grew, became more apparent. As I distanced myself from Missouri, it became even more apparent how backwards the values were. And so since the song came natural to me and it wasn't a forced scenario, I felt like, well, you know what? I definitely want to put this on the record, because I look at songs that are about politics as a thing that they have to be like a natural statement. If they're too much like sloganeering, then that has its place, but it doesn't have a place in my repertoire.
So take this pistol belt with it, co-sign agreement made for television. Who you be calling us Satan? You can't hide behind a politician on blood. It's on your dollars.
It's interesting because I feel like so much of kind of like country Americana music is like, driven in the South and in conservative communities. So like, were you nervous to put this song on a more country leaning album based on who country's audience generally is?
Well, I feel like that's essentially one of the important factors of why I put it on.
Yeah.
I felt like, the audience that would listen to this needs to kind of hear songs like that as a reminder that, all is not well. And somehow we have to keep plugging away here on making the communities down in the South and in places like Missouri and the Midwest and things like that, like raise above the old ways, rise above the old ways, because we don't live in a country that is healthy right now, and I think the public and music listeners, especially in the country genre, need to be reminded as much as possible that we're not in a healthy place, this country, and it takes us to make it healthy.
My final question is, and we like to ask this because, KEXP is a station all about music discovery. And so we love to ask musicians for a music recommendation. Like, what is a song that you are loving either right now, or a song that you feel has touched you somewhere in your life that stuck with you?
I would say, I think I'd have to say, and this might be a little generic, but Townes Van Sant, Poncho and Lefty. And I would say why? Because I think it's one of the best crafted songs I mean, there's a lot of really beautifully crafted songs, and I'm just in a place right now where songwriting and lyric and how lyric merges with melody and then the accompaniment, like if it's all like just completely perfect, it really moves me. And that song is a good example of something where the lyric, the melody, and the chordal accompaniment came together in such a way that is magic. And that's a rare, it's very rare to hit that, you know. Prince hit it with Purple Rain as well, you know. But it's hard. Every genre's got an example of that, but there's not many songs that where the lyric and the melody and the accompaniment all are just completely perfect. And so that's why I think I'll say Pancho and Lefty by Townes Van Sant.
Pancho met his match, you know, on the deserts down in Mexico, and nobody heard his dying words. That's the way it goes. And all the federales say they could have had him any day. They only let him hang around out of kindness, I suppose.
Well, I've been speaking with Lawrence Rothman. Their new album, The Plow That Broke the Plains, is out now. Lawrence, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
But if someone saved you, maybe I'll be next. Oh, I don't want to be your relax. No, I don't want to be your relax.
Next time on A Deeper Listen, the jazz saxophonist Kamasi Washington, who's collaborated with Kendrick Lamar, Flying Lotus, St. Vincent, and Run the Jewels, will talk about his solo record and how his then 2-year-old daughter came up with the melody for one of the songs.
It was like the moment that she realized that she could control what she was playing. So it was like the first time she played something kind of intentionally, you know, and so she played that melody, that da 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 da. She just kept playing it over and over again. I was like, oh wow, it's like your first little melody. So I recorded it and then I added the rest of the bits and pieces.
That's next time on A Deeper Listen. And before you go, please take 2 minutes of your time and subscribe to this podcast, rate it and review it, or share an episode with a friend or your followers. Those things go a long way in helping support this show for free. We are all about word of mouth, and those things go a long way in helping spread the word that the show is out there, exists, is worthy of other people's time. Because KEXP is a publicly funded radio station, we rely on listeners to do what we do. So you can help support A Deeper Listen by subscribing to the podcast, rating it, review it, sharing an episode with a friend or your followers, or you can help financially support the show with a $6 a month gift. You can do that at kexp.org/deeper. And thanks for taking a deeper listen.